Welcome to Channel AMEC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrate to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell on the side so once we have all the updates and news, be the first one getting all the insight. Now in today's video, I would like to share a case study, which is a real case whereby the applicant has gone through perhaps about 2 or 3 years of employment sponsorship and obviously going through the pandemic and how we have facilitated and assisted this client to actually obtain a permanent resident under the employment sponsor visa subclass 1A6. Well, that's the last visa that we attempted and we got that granted. But during the last 2 or 3 years, there has been a lot of other issues as well. Anyway, just to let you know that the sometimes migration is not just a straight one application. Utilizing different type of visa and go through perhaps appealing procedures could be actually be a success story at the end. Anyway, let's have a look. I will, for privacy concerns, I've removed all the IDs of the visa applicant for sure. But let's see. Now, as you can see, this is actually a appealing acknowledgement of application for AAT applications. So what does that mean? So this give you a little bit of background. So this client of mine who came to Australia to study motor mechanics of the TAFE. And obviously, once graduated, he to be employed and sponsored progressively. Now, at the time of the application for the graduate work subclass 485 visa, now we have strategically planned for this to be happening, utilizing the time taken through the appealing process, but obviously not doing for obvious reasons. So the applicant actually missed out the medical examination by ways, or obviously there was as you can see, that's back in February 2020. That's just about the time when the COVID pandemic started, right? If you can recall that time. So he missed out the medical examination. So obviously by policy and by regulation, the visa application for the 485 visa has to be refused. Now obviously once you refuse, you got that right to actually appeal for the procedure, and because the medical examination criteria is for the time of decision, so during that time on the appeal, all they been asked are obviously the AAT application took ages, as you have noticed for the past 2 or 3 years, the delay, the backlog and things. So during the time while holding the appeal application, the applicant himself actually has his bridging visa A, which allow him to actually work, and he continued to work with the employment that he's supposed to be in, and whilst doing that also get the skill assessment done as well. So that went for a while during the process. But how do we get around that? Because everything that he already met the requirement to be granted for 485 visa. The only thing left over is for the health examination. So what we did is we asked him to go again. Well, during the pandemic, it's very hard to book for the medicals, but ultimately he got that all done. So that was all done, and his visa, 485 visa, was successfully granted afterwards. So once we got that done, obviously we chat with the employer where he was allocated by. I don't know how he actually found it himself or was allocated by TAFE back then, because as you know, skill shortage is it's huge issues during the pandemic, and no one was actually a lot of skilled workers had already left Australia, so he actually being paid pretty awesome salary during the time, and also got the visa back. Now, once he got the visa back, obviously we need to look for a way to actually gain and get his proper visa for a long stay. Otherwise, the current 45 visa, well, back then was only 1.5 years, 18 months, wasn't enough for him to actually accrue in order to become a permanent resident. So what we did was we've had further subsequently lodged a 482 visa, TSS visa. As you notice, that's for employment sponsor temporary skill shortage. Now you may notice, now this was done back in 2022. I mean, this letter issued by Department of Home Affairs was done last year, 2022, in August, and it's actually another refusal. Now, what happened back then was during the changes over, the employer actually, so it's not the applicant's fault. The employer missed out one of the job advertisement. So what can be done? You can't go back to the time and put another job ads. So the nomination and also the visa application, as you can see here, was refused once again. Now, how many of you will want to have visa application refused twice in your lifetime? Obviously, I'm not here to promote that you continue to get your visa refused and appeal against the decision, so you keep getting the bridging visa. That's not the way to go. But there's always a way to resolve the situation. Now, obviously, the fault wasn't on the applicant, the fault was on the employer, but who can actually call your boss and say, look, this is all your fault, you got to pay for all this? It's actually very hard, right? So sometimes for my profession, as well as the agent in between, it's very hard to communicate between the employer and employee. You see the problem there, and that's why I think the new policy come out to simplify the employment sponsor visa is actually very, very important. Because how do you convince the employer to listen to you and to do the right thing for the visa application? Obviously, the employer in this case, well, he wasn't really listening and missed out a job advertisement and causing all the issue that we just saw in this the letter issued by the Department of Home Affairs, which is a notification of refusal, which is very bad, you know. So obviously the applicant took my advice and went again for another appeal. So his name appears on the AAT again, which is not a pleasant way to see it. But sometimes it's actually very hard for me myself to convince client to do so, because who really want to get appeal twice and rejected twice anyway. So what had happened is during that time, he actually and successfully accrued 3 years full-time work experiences, and plus make the English requirement. So we went through and confirmed the skill assessment is still valid. So that's one thing. Plus he has a 3-year full-time experience that's with evidence of support of pay slips, tax returns, all the pay slips required to be declared, and obviously we get the employer to provide the reference letter noting that he has actually been working there for a while. I mean, many years. So what we did was, last but not least, we lodged a subclass 186 direct entry. Now, noticing that we did not go through with 482 with the TRT stream, but we went through the direct entry stream straight away with the English competency, with a competent level, work experience of 3 years, and also the skill assessment. Done deal. Nominated again by the employer. So what we get here we go. That's the last letter from the Department of Home Affairs, dated back in February 13th. So very recent, 2023. It's a 5-year visa because it's a permanent visa. As you see here, employment nominated scheme subclass 186 granted. Finally. Now, it's a tough decision to be made. Sometimes for a person to go through 2 strikes and then come back with the 3rd one, and win it, it's actually very hard. And how long have we gone through this? It was probably about 3 years. Now, how many of you wanted to go through that long? I don't suggest that would be the way, but sometimes, I'm just saying, sometimes you may notice, you have planned so much ahead, but there's just so many obstacles coming in different directions without me notice. And how an experienced migration agent, I mean, I'm not just saying I'm good at this, but respond and react to such critical moment is very hard. And I think the harder thing for me myself is communication. I mean, during this time, 3 years, I need to communicate, convince the applicant that the roadmap that I'm drawing out is the way to go, and communicate and convince the employer who might not want to listen to my suggestion and advice. Well, he didn't at the beginning and end up with a refusal as well. Continue to believe in me and allowing us to actually take care of all the application altogether. And at the end, by this month, they actually got a happy ending, isn't it? Anyway, this is just a case study to share with you. Sometimes visa application and migration is not as smooth as it seems. So you need to respond to critical moments that isn't really planned by yourself. How many of you put in your EOI and application and expected to listen or get a correspondence from the immigration within 3 months, but they didn't? They wait and delay, and a lot of things happening around the world. Anyway, this is just letting you know, as long as your heart's in there, you always get there. Should you have more question, query, more than welcome to leave comment right down below. And I see you next video. Goodbye.